Jesus entered the temple courts, and while he was teaching, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him. "By what authority are you doing these things?" they asked. "And who gave you this authority?" Jesus replied, "I will also ask you a question. If you answer me, I will tell you by what authority I am doing these things. John's baptism, where did it come from? Was it from heaven or from men?" They discussed it among themselves and said, "If we say from heaven, he will ask, then why didn't you believe him? But if we say from men," they were afraid of the people, for they all held or hold that John was a prophet. So they answered Jesus, "We don't know." Then he said, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things. What do you think? There was a man who had 2 sons. I love this. What do you think? There was a man who had 2 sons. He went to the first and said, "Son, go and work today in the vineyard." "I will not," he answered, but later he changed his mind and went. Then the father went to the other son and said the same thing. He answered, "I will, sir," but he did not go. "Which of the 2 did what his father wanted?" "The first," they answered. Jesus said to them, "I tell you the truth, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are entering the kingdom of heaven, of God rather, ahead of you. For John came to you to show you the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes did. And even after you saw this, you did not change or repent and believe him." This is the good news or gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Please be seated as we go into the word today. We are most definitely creatures of habit. Very much so. Yesterday I had the privilege of emceeing the Bella Vista Band community show. And as I got up in front of people and was given the microphone, I almost said, "Welcome to worship this morning." Which would have been, I mean, it was just like involuntarily, and I didn't say that, fortunately. But force of habit, right? We most of our lives actually is run on our habits, and I think there is one of the most destructive habits or habitual way of thinking that Jesus addresses right on, not just Jesus, but even God before that, is the habit of believing that we are the self-image that we create. There's a huge danger in actually believing or attaching our identity to our self-image. The need for and our ability to create a self-image and attach ourselves to it is so profoundly innate that we do it without even trying, and it's very destructive because it creates a false sense of who we are and doesn't allow us to experience love, because love demands being authentic and genuine. And I want to get into that as I'm looking at this, because Jesus was well aware of that. In fact, Jesus was not concerned with image at all. In fact, if you take a look at his whole life, his Father, Jesus, God, was very deliberate in making sure that nobody could attach an image to him. When he was born to a very insignificant woman, a young woman who had very little recognition, very little popularity, significant to God, but on the worldly stage, just another person, ordinary person. Jesus' father was an ordinary person that at some point in time when he was a teenager probably died, because you don't hear of him ever again. And then when Jesus was growing up, he grew up in an area town that had not a reputation for anything of great value. In fact, when he came on the scene, people said, "He's from Nazareth." Nazareth. Can anything good come out of that area? It's from the ghetto. Now is what we'd say. He's from the hood. Nothing good comes from the hood. And this guy comes from the hood. So how can anything good come from him? You see, image is everything. And we spend so much of our time in image in the hopes that people will like us. And that's what we put it out there for. Nobody puts out an image that they want people to dislike. They put on an image that they feel other people will like. In fact, it's funny, nowadays it's even accentuated. You go on, post anything on Facebook, and, oh, how many likes do I have? I got to have more likes. I got to have, will you be my friend? Please like me. You know, all this kind of stuff. And, it's part of our nature. And Jesus understood this. And so here he is. He's in the temple courts, and he's teaching. And he doesn't have any kind of flash. He doesn't have the appearance, the image, if you will, that others in his profession had. And so the chief priests and the elders of the people come to him because he's speaking as if he knows what he's talking about, and things are happening because he does know what he's talking about, but they're confused because they've tied themselves to an image. Religious people can do that a lot, In fact, Jesus even said, just be careful that you don't get attached to your long flowing robes. Someone asked me if that's why I don't wear robes. I said, no, not really. It's just not my thing. I'm vain. I have vanity. It's just not with robes. It's other things. But she's, that doesn't make anybody holy or anything. It's just an image. And in fact, I want you to be so careful about your image that when you pray, just keep that between you and God. Go into your closet so that nobody can see what you're doing and try to make an image out of it. Make it be real. Make it be real. That's a hard thing in this. I was, a number of times I'd see people pasting different pictures on Facebook, and here we are, just this happy couple or whatever, blah, 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 and then 2 weeks later they're divorced. Or they're calling me because they're thinking about divorce. Well, wait a second, I just went on Facebook and everything looked great. Well, yeah, that's an image, you see. But we all do that. And it's incredibly destructive, really. And so they come to Jesus, and here are individuals. See, here's the thing about the contrast that Jesus is making. You have some people that have a self-image that they get a lot of self-esteem and a lot of accolades from. That's why we try to get a good self-image. And here was a number of people that got a lot of positive attributes for wearing the robes. I always found it interesting. If you've ever gone to any kind of protest march or anything, and clergy are there, they're always in their collar. I can never understand. You ever see the pictures? I don't know why that is, but it is. And Jesus was running into people that had a vested interest in maintaining this image because it benefited them a lot. Their image is everything. It's like an entertainer. I've got to keep this image because my whole livelihood is on this image. I make a lot of money, or I get a lot of accolades, or I get a lot of respect based on this image. And they may not even intentionally been doing that, but that's the reality of it. And so here Jesus is coming. He doesn't have their image. And what they're trying to do is ask him, really, not where are you getting this authority, but who do you think you are? And he understood it. And so Jesus replied with a very similar question. Well, I'll ask you where I get this authority. You don't really want to know. Because if you wanted to know, you would ask me in a manner that's not degrading. So you can ask different questions, and the same question can be asked in a different way. Someone comes home at the end of the day, and you put your hand in their hand. What's wrong? What's wrong? You can ask that same question and degrade someone. What's wrong with you? See the difference? Same question, but your intention is totally different. And you can feel that. You come home and someone in your family said, I'm sensing something wrong. What's wrong with you? That's totally different than coming home and being accused of being worthless by someone saying, what's wrong with you? But it's the same question. And so they asked Jesus this question, not because they want to know his authority. It's a degrading question. Who gave you this authority, realizing he has no credentials according to their standards? He has no degrees. He doesn't have the reputation. And so Jesus asked them a very specific question. He said, well, I'll tell you, if you answer this question, John's baptism, in other words, John, who preceded Jesus in this same ministry, he was out ministering, and the Bible is very clear about his appearance. He didn't have any appearance that had any kind of significance to it. He wore camel's hair. And I'm not talking about a nice camel hair suit, right? I'm talking bad camel hair, the smelly kind. That's what he wore. and he ate locusts, because, you can, part of your image is where you dine, right? Top hat and hello, sir. They know my name at this restaurant. I know, because I go through the drive-thru all the time. That's why they know me. They know I like the number 4. Who doesn't, right? But that's part of the image. And he says, well, I'll tell you what. His authority, and this is where Jesus is not asking if they know the answer to the question. Bear in mind, okay? In the same way that you want to know the answer if you care about somebody. What's wrong with you? Because you care. You want to know the answer. You can take that same question and degrade someone simply by saying, what's wrong with you? You don't want to know the answer. You're degrading them. You see the difference? In the same way that they're asking the question, they're trying to degrade him. Who gave you this authority? He asks them a question not because he wants to know the answer per se, he gets it, but he asks them this question in order to bring to light their attachment to their own self-image. And if you take a look at how they answer, take a look at it. He asks them, okay, what about John's baptism? Since you have the spiritual authority and you're able to make good assessments, and you know God more than the average bear. John's baptism and ministry, where did that come from? And look at how they did it. They discussed it among themselves and said, if we say from heaven, then he's going to ask, then why didn't you believe him? But if we say from men, we are afraid of the people, for they all hold that John was a prophet. We're just trying to save face here. What's the best way we can answer this question to maintain our image? Have you ever seen politicians do that? Well, one must realize that in the context of the current situation, there are many considerable values that must be taken into consideration. And at the end of this, what the heck are you talking about? Well, I answered your question, didn't I? Well, no, not really. But see, what they're doing is they're discussing in a way to save face. I've heard it said you cannot save face and save your butt at the same time. That's pretty good. You cannot save your face and your butt at the same time. And see, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to save face. And it's not an uncommon, we all try to do it. We all want popularity because in one way we believe that we'll feel valued if we're popular. That's why we chase after popularity. That's why the people that we look up to are people who are popular. I remember when I was, it was a number of years ago when Tiger Woods was still, before he had his quote-unquote discretions brought out to everybody, he was promoting a certain kind of watch. I don't even know what kind of watch it was. I only buy a certain kind. I buy the kind that keeps on ticking if it takes a licking. If you remember that Timex. But when they first put it up, I drive by and I go, I don't understand why Tiger Woods wearing this watch is going to make me want to buy the watch anymore. But every single day of going by, I'm like, man, he's really got a good life, doesn't he? Boy, he really has it going on. And if I can kind of partake somewhat in his life, then I'll feel more alive in my life. And so subtly, it started working on me. Making me aware of, I don't have that kind of watch that has, And the next thing I know, there's this pull for me to buy the watch. And I realize it's just common human nature. We go to celebrities for everything because we somehow believe in the pursuit of the right image that popularity will give us what we need, which is love. And it never does. It can't because it's not real. But it promises that it will. And so popularity and celebrity worship is everywhere. And image is everywhere. You have to wear the right clothes, otherwise you won't be accepted. And it's a very real experience. Just try going to any public school. Gotta wear the right clothes. Gotta have the right hairstyle. Gotta have that image. Otherwise, who are you? And this is the kind of thinking that Jesus is tearing down. He's tearing down this kind of thinking that links who you are with your self-image. And see, that's very hard. If you link yourself to your self-image, at some point in time, your self-image is going to go to hell in a handbasket. One of these days, if you're a guy, you're going to look and realize you have a gray hair. Now you have to adjust your image. Either I'm going to be a really cool gray hair person, or I'm going right to the Grecian. But that's all image. And if you're attached to that image, it'll feel like you're dying. Hence, in our culture, we have things called a midlife crisis. Well, what's the crisis? Everybody gets old and dies. The crisis is, I don't know who I am. You're right. Because you've attached yourself to your image. And it is a crisis. If you built your whole family around your image, and your image changes, oh my gosh, it is a crisis. Or if you lose your job and you attach your job to your career, or your image to your career, it is a crisis, or whatever the case may be. So this is the kind of thinking that Jesus is referring to, and that's why he asks them the question, and then when they give the answer, he says, well, I'm going to give you an example. I want you to tell me this. And this just has always stuck in my mind. He said, what do you think? I like that in verse 28. Well, what do you think? I want to get your opinion on this. There was a man who had 2 sons. Now, if you don't have sons or you don't have kids or whatever, try to imagine yourself being a parent. And you have 2 sons, and he went to the first son, whether that's the oldest or youngest, we don't know. But he goes to the first son, he says, I need you, go work in the vineyard today. Now, none of us have vineyards, I'm going to assume. So let's just bring it into our kind. Hey, take out the garbage today. Something simple. Hey, go mow the lawn. What else? Sequoia's like, go put new shingles on the roof. He's more a taskmaster than us, but these kind of things, right? So he goes to the first son, he says, go do this. And his son immediately responds with, I will not. He answered, but later he changed his mind and went. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm hanging out at another person's family and they got a 15, 14, 16-year-old kid. And one of the parents says, take out the garbage. And the kid immediately responds with, no, we're going to have problems. I mean, we're just going to have problems. And see, the reality of this particular situation is nobody gets to having this kind of an attitude without having that attitude reinforced over a period of time. Nobody just, grows up with that kind of attitude. It's developed over time. It's allowed. You cannot, in my house, talk bad about, your mom in this case, whatever. But now in this case, this kid has been allowed to do it so long, it's become his habit. He immediately says it. Our habits are those things we do immediately. We don't have to think about it. If you take a look at it, there's no thinking involved. It's just immediately he says, no, go take out the garbage. No. But after he says no, he changed his mind. He changed his habit. He changed his habitual way of how to think. At some point in time, he realized, no, this isn't good. How I respond is not good. And so he changed his mind. Then he's got another son that says the same thing. He goes to his kid, take out the garbage. Kid says, sure, no problem, just happy. But he doesn't do it. Now, as a parent, I've got a bigger issue with the first kid than I do the second. Because the first kid is flat out rebellious in your face. You ain't going to tell me what to do. In the words of Cartman, I do what I want. Whatever. Right? And that's not going to fly. But the second kid, if anyone's not going to do it, I can deal with that. Hey, you promised me you were going to do this, you didn't do this, right? But Jesus makes it a point. Who actually, in the end, did what was required? Well, the first son. How did he do it? He changed his habitual way of thinking. See, it's very important. Jesus, as a perfect teacher, teaches us how to think about how we think. And in that way, we are able to see things that we couldn't ever see. In other words, in the conclusion to this, Jesus said, well, let me tell you the truth. The tax collectors and the prostitutes, they're experiencing the presence of God ahead of you. Why is that? Because as religious people, you are so attached to the image that you don't know who you are outside of the robes. You don't know who you are outside of the collar. And for a number of us as human beings, we don't know who we are outside of our image that we've created of ourselves to present. We don't know how to be any other person. I don't know how to be a 49-year-old person. I've been spending a lot of time trying to be 29. All right? And then once I reached 29, I didn't know what it was to be 29. So, you know how it goes. And then eventually you're dead. You didn't never know how to figure it out. Because if you attach yourself to your self-image, you'll never know how to be. And Jesus saying, you can't do that. Who you are is this: the most precious being ever created. That's who you are. You are an endless spiritual being with an eternal destiny in God's great universe. That's who you are. You are a person that God has created to be in God's image, and you are so incredibly valuable that God would give his own life to demonstrate it. That's who you are. You are the kind of person that no matter what you have done or what you are doing, no matter what has been done to you, no matter the disappointments, no matter what image you have created that has maybe fallen flat on completely got destroyed, that has absolutely no impact on God's love for you at all. That's who you are. And if you take a look at it, the way that Jesus died was not just a crucifixion in terms of killing him physically. It was a way of humiliating people and ruining their image. Nobody wanted that. Nobody wanted that. Please let me die with dignity. Sometimes people will say, well, that was an undignified way to die. Stripped him of his image. And, the power of image. I remember when it wasn't too many years ago, there was a pastor, very well-known pastor out of Colorado Springs. He was a president of some evangelical association or something, big church, all over the place in terms of his name. And when Colorado went through their political season regarding gay marriage, his church took a particular stand. And as it turned out, this particular pastor on regular occasions was going up to Denver and hiring out a male prostitute and having drugs and spending time with this prostitute. And the prostitute actually came out and went on the air and blew the whole cover, which was a big scandal, right? And I just said, he's a human being. What do you expect? You guys have put him in this image. And we do that as people. Our leaders have to be this image. They have to be. Let me tell you something. Pastors aren't even close to being perfect. I mean, I'm close, but that's just my self-image, and that's going to go down real fast. Every human being has that. One of the things that I had to struggle with early on in my ministry, and it rears its ugly head from time to time, is I wish I was a more popular minister. Why? Well, if I attach myself to my image, that's what the image wants. It believes it will be more valuable. It won't. It just won't. But see, human beings are just prone to that. And that's why it's very important to be in fellowship with one another and to be able to be real with one another so that we don't get caught up in a self-image that actually keeps us away from God and keeps us away from having a real connection with other people. One of the things that we were able to experience together this last few days at Bill's cabin is we went through, and as we opened in prayer and kind of did our check-in, we went through and each of us had the opportunity to answer this question in fellowship with one another. What I don't want you to know about me is this. What? I'm not going to tell you. It was in private. What was it? But you see how answering that question, you got to get real. Because your image can't allow yourself to answer that question. Because your image is built on something completely different than having people know who you really are. It's having people know who you want them to know who you are. And Jesus, God repeatedly, sometimes abruptly, sometimes subtly, sometimes in different other manners, but he will not allow us to attach ourselves to our image, to our self-created image. I mean, it's just a basic reality. You're not going to stay 29 forever, or 39, 49, 59, etc. And your health will not remain perfect. And all that, if your image has been built on certain principles and things, that will all come crumbling down. And then it's a real crisis. But see, if you build our identity on the reality that we are unbelievably cherished people, real people, then nothing that comes against us is going to be able to drag us down. It may knock us down, but that's different than being dragged down. And you get knocked down, you can get back up. And so this is a very important teaching that Jesus gives us, and he gave it repeatedly, actually, and says, the image, and it's the reason why the tax collectors and the prostitutes were so willing to give up their image, because nobody wants to be that. It's like, yeah, you come to me and everyone just calls me a whore, but you say that I'm a child of God? I'm really ready to get rid of that image. But if you've got an image that says, I'm all that, and I get a paycheck from it, you don't want to give up that image. And that's why Jesus says it's going to be hard for you Pharisees or you religious leaders to give up your image, because you got some respect with it. These people that have no respect with their image, they're much more willing to give it up and become who they genuinely are. That's why, in the words of Dave Chappelle, I was just keeping it real. But there's truth behind that. Keeping it real is all there is. Keeping it real is all there is. And this is the only thing that God requires of us, is that we just do our best to be real. And isn't that what you want in any relationship? Right? Any relationship. You come home from school and you stole something, I can deal with that. Just don't lie about it, right? Why? Because now you're not being real. You come home and you got a bad grade. I don't know if they do it anymore, but when I had grades, they used to send the grades home. Ever have that? They didn't give them to you. They sent them in the mail. So I had to get the mail before my parents did and use the eraser and do the best I could, And I wasn't keeping it real. But I was trying to save by saving, And this is the work that God is doing as He's building a community of people that are so safe with one another, we can be real. So incredibly safe with one another and non-judgmental and filled and permeated with love that we can be completely, unbelievably real. And that you don't see in this world. You just don't. We have to hide. We have to deny, and we have to repress. And those are the habits that most of us have to break in order to experience that love. And it isn't easy. It's not easy. But with God, all things are possible. And sometimes you go down swinging, holding on to that self-image best you can. But eventually, once you surrender that over, there's this beauty on the other side. This beauty. Let's pray.